There is a sanctuary within you that has never been sick. It is the place of profound stillness, where the noise of diagnosis fades away and the whisper of true knowing remains. The body is not a machine to be repaired, but a living temple whose ancient language we have merely forgotten how to speak. Tonight, we will sit by the quiet fire of Zen wisdom and simply listen. Welcome, dear friend, to this still hour. Tonight, we begin a journey not of seeking a cure, but of rediscovering a wholeness that has always resided within the very marrow of your being. For thousands of years, the great masters of Zen understood that the separation between the physical ailment and the spiritual unrest is an illusion. They taught a form of healing rooted not in external medicine, but in a profound shift of consciousness. We call this the path of inherent wellness, the deep recognition of our fundamental, unbroken nature. This evening, we will unfold 5 timeless principles of Zen healing, each one a luminous koan that invites us to put down the burden of carrying a broken self. We will explore the way the body speaks wisdom, how emotions can be welcomed as essential allies, the eternal medicine available in the sheer presence of this moment, the liberating stories we can choose to tell about time and aging, and the quiet, radiant power of embodied purpose. It is a path that asks for nothing but your gentle attention. It requires no effort, only the willingness to settle. Imagine yourself now in the deep solitude of a mountain monastery, the air cool and clean, the silence unbroken save for the distant tolling of a great bell. Let the weight of your day, your worries, and your to-do lists simply fall away like old autumn leaves. There is nothing to fix here. There is only the sweet unfolding of what is already true. Find your coziest spot, maybe with tea or wrapped in something soft. Now, allow your breath to deepen, soften your shoulders, and let the gentle rhythm of the story become the only thing that guides you toward rest. The language of wisdom, listening to the body. We begin with the first and most crucial principle of Zen healing. The body is not a faulty machine to be fixed by the mind, but an oracle of profound inherent wisdom. Its whispers and its shouts are never mistakes. They are simply a language we have been conditioned to ignore. In the quiet, cold morning light of a remote temple in the hills of Kyoto centuries ago, lived a young novice named Kenshin. He had sought the path of Zen with a fierce, almost desperate hunger for enlightenment, believing that the mind was the sole instrument of truth. He practiced zazen with rigid intensity, pushing his body through pain and discomfort, seeing his physical form as nothing more than a crude vessel, a distraction from the purity of awareness. Yet, a persistent, dull ache settled in his lower back, a constant throb that intensified whenever he sat in meditation. It became his adversary, a constant test of his will. He tried ignoring it, seeing it as an illusion of the flesh. He tried forcing his breath through it, attempting to burn it away with sheer mental focus. The ache, however, only grew louder, forcing him to shift, to fidget, to break the stillness he so desperately sought. One winter evening, defeated and unable to bear the pain any longer, Kenshin approached the master Ryokan. The master was sweeping the packed earth outside his simple hut, his movements slow and deliberate, each sweep a complete universe unto itself. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp soil. Kenshin bowed low. "Master," he whispered, "I am tormented. My body betrays my spirit. This constant pain in my back prevents me from achieving the true stillness of Zazen. How do I conquer this rebellious flesh and make it silent?" Master Ryokan paused, leaning his bamboo broom against the clay wall. He did not look at Kenshin's face, but instead gazed down at the ground where he had been sweeping. His voice, when it came, was like the gentle crunch of snow underfoot, low, clear, and utterly present. "When you sweep the path," Ryokan asked, "do you scold the leaves for falling?" Kenshin blinked, confused. "No, master. They fall because it is their nature." "And when the body speaks, how is it different?" Ryokan finally lifted his eyes, and they were filled with the deep, vast serenity of the mountain itself. "The pain is merely the leaf of the body's teaching, falling at the precise moment it is ready to be seen. You wish to conquer the flesh. But what if the ache in your back is not a failure, but the profound wisdom that you are holding the world too tightly in the small of your will?" This was the first turning. The master was pointing not to a flaw in the body, but to a rigidity in the scene, the Chinese character that embodies the heart, mind, and spirit as one unified organ. Kenshin had assumed the mind was the superior entity, directing the dull, resistant body. Ryokan was suggesting a democracy of being, where the body, through sensation, offered the most immediate, unedited truth. The first noble truth of the Buddha is often translated as "life is suffering" or dukkha. We often think of dukkha as crushing, external pain, but the masters teach that dukkha, in its deepest sense, is the suffering of resistance. It is the unease, the subtle misalignment that comes from wanting reality to be different from what it is. When the body signals discomfort, a tight knot in the shoulder, a dull pressure behind the eyes, the chronic ache, we immediately react with resistance. We categorize it as an enemy, a burden, a sign of something broken that must be banished. In this resistance, we compound the physical sensation with a mental story. The ache becomes, "I am weak. I am failing. I will never be well. I am a victim of my own body. This secondary layer of mental suffering, born of resistance, is the true barrier to healing. Zen asks us to step out of this story and into immediate perception. We are invited to practice what Master Ryokan was pointing to listen to the body's language as pure information, devoid of moral or judgmental content. Imagine now, as you lie or sit, that sensation which calls for your attention. Perhaps it is a gentle tension, a lingering fatigue, or a sharp, intermittent twinge. Do not name it a diagnosis. Do not call it my illness. Simply register it as energy in motion. When Kenshin returned to his cushion, he tried Ryokan's teaching. Instead of battling his back pain, he simply listened. He allowed the ache to have the fullness of its being. He experienced its texture. It was not a flat, solid thing, but a swirling confluence of heat, pressure, throbbing, and a slight electric numbness. When his mind interjected, "This is wrong. I should not feel this," he gently acknowledged the thought, then returned his attention to the raw, visceral sensation itself. And here is the mystery. When the resistance dropped, the sensation did not necessarily disappear, but its quality changed. It ceased to be his enemy. It transformed from a barrier into a teacher. What was the message the body was speaking to Kenshin? Through weeks of this deep listening, he finally heard it. The pain was located precisely where he habitually strained his physical form, trying to compensate for a lack of inner stability. He realized he was not only forcing his spine, but he was also forcing his spiritual practice. He was chasing Satori, enlightenment, as if it were a prize to be won through brute effort, rather than a natural state to be allowed. The body was crying out, "Stop striving. Settle. You are already here." In the language of the body, fatigue often means you are pouring out more than the universe is pouring into you. Tension often means you are braced against a future that may never arrive. Inflammation often means the inner fire of resistance is burning too hot. Welcome the cool acceptance of what is. To heal naturally, Zen teaches us that we must first become brilliant linguists of our own internal experience. This is the practice of non-duality in sensation. In the monastery kitchen, a master once instructed a cook to make soup. The cook, being a perfectionist, spent hours seeking the exact ratio of herbs and vegetables, worrying that the taste would not be perfect. The master simply pointed to the ladle. "There is no difference," the master said, "between the ladle that stirs the soup and the taste of the soup itself. The stirring is the tasting." Similarly, there is no difference between the body that feels the pain and the awareness that observes the pain. When you cease to be the victim of your sensation and become the vast space for your sensation, the entire dynamic shifts. You are the mountain, and the pain is merely a passing cloud. The cloud does not diminish the mountain. Let us explore this in the stillness. Close your eyes and allow your awareness to descend from the busy highways of the mind to the quiet, ancient earth of the body. You are not searching for a diagnosis, only for the deepest, most subtle truth available in this moment. Begin with your hands. Feel the slight pulse, the temperature of the air on your skin. Allow your awareness to move inward, past the skin, past the muscle, toward the bone. Is there a subtle hum, a faint warmth? This is the simple, honest presence of life energy. Now, gently, turn your attention to an area of discomfort, if one exists. Do not label it. Do not analyze its cause. Instead, become intensely curious about its shape. Is the sensation expansive and dull, like a heavy, worn stone? Is it focused and sharp, like a sliver of ice? Does it move and flicker, like a trapped moth? Or does it sit still, like a pool of deep water? When you observe the pain this closely, without assigning a story to it, something magical happens. The raw sensation, when held in the gentle light of non-judgmental awareness, begins to dissolve its own resistance. The energy that was locked up in the fight against the pain is suddenly freed. This energy, the masters teach, is what the body uses to heal itself. This is the meaning of non-seeking in healing. We are not seeking a body without sensation. That is an impossible fantasy in a world of constant change. Anicca. We are seeking a mind in harmony with all sensation. Consider the koan of the master and the fever. An esteemed Zen master, revered for his profound understanding of emptiness, fell gravely ill with a raging fever. The villagers gathered outside his hermitage, worried that such a holy man could be so afflicted. A young disciple, filled with doubt, asked the master, "You have taught us that the true self is beyond sickness and health. Yet, master, you burn with this fever. Where is the true self now?" The master, his face flushed, his breath shallow, simply pointed a trembling finger to the hearth, where a kettle was heating water for tea. "Watch the kettle," the master rasped. "The heat is in the water. The heat is in the metal. The heat is in the air. Tell me, foolish child, where is the boundary between the heat of the fire and the fever of this body?" The disciple was stunned into silence. "The boundary is an illusion. The true self is not something that hides from the fever. It is the very awareness that holds the experience of the fever. It is the consciousness that knows the heat is rising, that the throat is dry, that the muscles ache. When we stop clinging to the idea of a self that should be immune to experience, we step into the vast, fearless domain of the true self. And in that domain, fear the root of so much resistance and physical contraction, begins to recede. The masters teach that the body is not merely physical matter. It is a manifestation of consciousness. The pain you feel is consciousness communicating with itself. If you approach it with the compassion you would offer a weeping child, the weeping softens. Take a gentle, full breath now and send it directly into the area of your greatest physical tension. You are not breathing to fix it. You are breathing to acknowledge it. You are saying, in the silent, ancient language of the breath, I see you. You are welcome here. The true power of healing is to realize that the body does not malfunction. It only faithfully reflects the sum total of your mental and emotional ecology. If you carry a lifetime of unspoken grief, the lungs and heart may tighten. If you hold on to ancient resentments, the liver and stomach may protest. The body is the honest scorekeeper, but this is not a cause for shame. It is a profound opportunity. Every ache, every persistent sign is a gentle, repeated invitation from the depth of your being to look more closely, to love more fiercely, and to let go of the stories that have kept you contracted and small. Imagine the body as a deep, clear pool of water, reflecting the sky. When the mind is agitated, full of worry, striving, or fear, the water ripples and the reflection of the sky is broken. We mistakenly believe the sky is broken or the water is corrupted, but the masters tell us, simply put down the stirring stick. Stop trying to change the water or the sky. The moment you rest the mind, the water stills and the sky's perfection is revealed once more, effortlessly. The wisdom of the body is in its immediacy. It cannot lie. It cannot remember yesterday's sickness with the same urgency as the mind can. It only knows this moment. The body is always healed in the now. When you feel well, you are well. When you feel pain, you are in a moment of pain. But the moment does not define the whole. The path of Zen healing begins and ends with the revolutionary act of radical acceptance of the physical sensation as it is, without filtering it through the lens of fear or past memory. This acceptance is not surrender to illness. It is surrender to truth. And truth, in the Buddhist sense, is the only medicine that heals what truly hurts, the contracted self that fears change. Let us sit together in this truth for a few moments more. Allow your breath to be your anchor, the single thread connecting the Shagiyin to the body. Listen to the silent conversation happening within you. The body speaks with the language of sensation, and the awareness listens with the language of pure, encompassing compassion. Let the two become one. There is no other practice. There is no other medicine more potent than this unforced, complete presence. The unspoken complaint amongst ailment. The path of natural healing, as taught in the Zen tradition, is a journey from the surface complaint to the root cause, which is almost always a profound resistance to the way things truly are. The body, in its absolute honesty, mirrors this spiritual holding. To understand this principle more deeply, we turn now to an extended narrative that reveals the intricate dance between the physical ailment and the unspoken truth of the heart-mind. In the 18th century, a time of vigorous Zen practice in Japan, there was a monk named Zenshin. Zenshin was a model of outward devotion. He rose before the first star faded, his movements disciplined, his recitation of the sutras flawless. He managed the monastery's finances, attended to the master, and never missed a moment of zazen. Yet, as he approached his 30th year, a debilitating lethargy began to creep into his life. It was not mere fatigue. It was a profound, bone-deep exhaustion that seemed to defy rest. He felt heavy, as if he carried a massive invisible sack of sand upon his back. His eyes were perpetually clouded, his joints stiff, and his inner clarity, which he had so painstakingly cultivated, dimmed into a dull gray haze. The physicians of the nearby village could find no definite cause. They spoke of ki deficiency, of humors unbalanced, but their herbal remedies offered no lasting relief. Zenshin's master, a formidable woman named Kanon-san, watched him quietly. Kanon-san was known not for her dramatic sermons, but for the terrifying depth of her insight. She could perceive the soul's geography simply by observing the way a monk held his teacup. One afternoon, during a formal interview, San-zen, Zenshin presented his physical complaint as a barrier to his enlightenment. "Master," Zenshin said, his voice slow and heavy, "my body is failing me. I cannot summon the energy to continue the practice with the necessary vigor. I sleep long hours, yet I wake unrested. I am attempting to force the light back into me, but the darkness persists. How can I possibly realize the Buddha nature when I am so entirely consumed by this physical weakness?" Master Kanon-san sat for a long moment in silence, the only sound the gentle drip of melting snow from the eaves. She held a smooth gray river stone in her palm, turning it slowly. "Zenshin," she said, her voice clear and sharp, "you claim your body is failing you. I perceive, instead, that your body is succeeding beautifully." Zenshin looked up, startled. "Succeeding, master? In what way?" "It is succeeding," Kanon-san stated calmly. "In speaking a truth, your spirit has been determined to silence. Your physical state is a magnificent protective mechanism. It is doing precisely what you have commanded it to do." She paused, allowing the weight of the statement to settle. "Tell me, Zenshin, what is the one thing your heart-mind has refused to do for the last 5 years?" Zenshin immediately thought of all the charitable works he had performed, all the chores he had completed, all the difficult sutras he had memorized. "I have refused nothing, Master. I have given everything to the way." "You have given the outer shell everything," Canon-san corrected gently. "But your deepest, quietest self, the self that existed before you ever wore this brown robe, that self, Zenshin, remains bound and gagged in the cellar of your spirit. You entered this monastery not out of pure yearning, but out of fear of failure in the world outside. You chose the path of Zen, not as liberation, but as a perfect, ordered shield against the chaos of ambition, rivalry, and disappointment. This was the core of his spiritual resistance. Zenshin had been the son of a successful merchant, destined to inherit a vast, demanding business. He feared the moral compromises and the unending competitive strife that came with that life. He saw the monastery as a refuge, a place where success was measured only by inner peace, a quality he believed was unattainable in the marketplace. His energy, his very life force, was being spent not on the demands of the present, but on maintaining the psychic barrier against the life he had fled. The zazen was rigid because it was driven by fear. The service was tireless because it was a desperate attempt to prove he was worthy of the refuge he had found. Canon-san continued, "Your deepest truth is that you despise the very idea of effort rooted in expectation, yet you have structured your life here on nothing but effort and expectation. Your body, being wise, finally created a physical condition, this profound, crippling fatigue that makes effort impossible. It is the most compassionate act your body could perform. It has forced you to stop and to finally confront the unspoken resistance to your own motive." This realization shattered Zenshin's composure. The physical fatigue suddenly seemed less like an ailment and more like a profound sacred teaching. His body was his friend, not his enemy, forcing him into a stillness the mind would never have chosen. This story illustrates a central tenet of the mind-body connection in Zen. The body manifests the spiritual compromise. Physical illness is often the somatic expression of an unresolved koan, a dilemma that the intellect cannot solve and the heart refuses to face. Healing, therefore, is not about treating the physical symptom. It is about dissolving the underlying compromise. The great Zen master Hakuin Ekaku, who lived in the century before Zenshin, was a towering figure in the history of Japanese Zen and a renowned healer. Hakuin himself suffered a severe psychosomatic illness in his youth, which he called the Zen sickness, a physical and mental breakdown caused by overly intense, rigid, and fearful practice. Hakuin's eventual recovery was not found in herbs or external remedies, but in a radical shift of consciousness, taught to him by an elderly hermit. This hermit taught Hakuin the technique of Nai Kan No Ho, or the method of introspection. This method is a profound practice of inner visualization that directly communicates with the body's innate wisdom, bypassing the resistance of the analytical mind. The principle of Nai Kan is simple yet revolutionary. The mind has the power to either constrict the vital life energy, ki or prana, or to liberate it. Fear constricts. Focused, benevolent attention liberates. The technique involves directing the energy from the often overheated head, where worry and analysis reside, down into the lower abdomen, the tendon, the field of cinnabar, which is considered the center of physical and spiritual vitality. Hakuin taught his students, and we are invited to practice this now, to visualize a deep golden ointment or a clear flowing liquid being poured from the crown of the head. This healing essence is completely pure, imbued with stillness and unconditional acceptance. As you sit or lie now, close your eyes and bring your full gentle attention to your breath. Allow it to become slow, deep, and silent. Now, imagine this healing essence beginning its descent. It flows down the outside of your skull, smoothing the skin, relaxing the scalp, easing the tension held behind the eyes and the jaw. It continues down the neck, melting the tight, hard knots that brace your shoulders against the world. The golden light flows down the spine, entering the very center of your being. As it passes through the lungs, it clears any sense of grief or heavy, unbreathed moments. As it passes through the heart, it dissolves any residue of old pain, offering unconditional acceptance to this tender organ. The essence flows down, past the solar plexus, where anxiety often gathers like a cold, tight fist. Feel the warmth of the golden flow gently softening this knot. And finally, the flow settles in the tendon, a few inches below the navel. In this lower center, visualize the energy pooling, becoming a radiant, warm core. This core is the source of your physical vitality, the true engine of health. This light is not something you have to earn. It is your fundamental, birthright energy, always whole, always available. Hakuin discovered that by focusing the mind, not on the illness, but on this center of vitality, the entire physical system shifts from a state of fight or flight into a state of rest and repair. The anxiety-fueled energy in the head, which had exhausted his physical body, was redirected to where it could serve life rather than hinder it. Zenshin, under the guidance of Master Canon San, was asked to undertake a similar practice, but his initial focus was on the internal story of his fatigue, not just the physical sensation. Canon San instructed him, Do not meditate to gain energy Zenshin. Meditate to observe where your existing energy is leaking. He began to observe his inner life, not as a monk striving for holiness, but as an honest observer of the human condition. He sat in zazen, and the immense weight of fatigue would settle upon him. Instead of fighting it, he would welcome it as a mirror. Why is the body so tired? He realized the body was tired because the mind was relentlessly working to maintain a false identity, the identity of the perfect monk who had transcended worldly concerns. The energy leak was the constant, unconscious self-monitoring. Am I sitting straight enough? Are my thoughts pure? Is the master pleased with my work? This constant self-judgment and effort to sustain a perfect facade consumed more vital force than a week of manual labor. The healing of Zenshin began when he stopped demanding to be well. He accepted the fatigue, not as a disease, but as a temporary necessary state of grace. He allowed himself to move slowly. He let his posture relax. He stopped trying to be the perfect monk and simply began being the flawed, weary human sitting on the cushion. And the moment the striving ended, the body's defensive mechanism, the crippling fatigue, was no longer necessary. The truth had been heard. The spiritual compromise was dissolved. The energy he had unknowingly locked away in his internal police work was liberated. It flowed back to his muscles, his organs, and his spirit. He did not become miraculously youthful, but the gray haze lifted. He was simply present, whole, and honest in his flawed humanity. This is the ultimate teaching of Principle 1. Healing begins when you stop asking the body to conform to your fear and start asking the mind to align with the body's truth. In the tradition of Zen and classical Taoist medicine, the body is a microcosm of the universe. The internal organs are not just functional machines. They are the residences of fundamental virtues and emotional states. To heal, you must harmonize this internal ecology. The lungs hold the grief of separation and the vitality of connection. The liver holds the tension of anger and the ease of clear direction. The kidneys hold the deep, ancient fear and the courage of the will. The heart holds the pain of isolation and the profound joy of true presence. When you refuse to feel the emotion, the grief, the anger, the fear, it does not vanish. It is simply stored in the physical tissue of the associated organ, manifesting as chronic congestion, tightness, or pain. The body is all always giving you a map back to the spiritual compromise you must address. Let us close this section by returning to the silent listening. Find that area of your body. It might be the tension in your jaw, the pressure in your chest, the ache in your hip, and approach it now, not as a battlefield, but as a sacred text. Breathe into it, gently, lovingly. Ask the silence beneath the pain. What is the unspoken truth I am refusing to acknowledge? What is the story I am telling myself about my life that is causing this physical bracing? Do not search for a dramatic answer. The answer is usually small, simple, and utterly humbling. It may be the realization that you are afraid to rest. It may be the simple, quiet awareness that you feel unseen. Whatever the truth is, acknowledge it with profound self-compassion. The body, hearing its truth spoken for the first time, begins to relax its protective stance. The healing energy, which was always present, is finally released from its prison of resistance. This is not a magic cure. It is a deep, slow surrender to the intelligence of life itself. Rest in the knowledge that your body is not broken. It is merely waiting for you to listen to the extraordinary, clear wisdom. It has been speaking all along. The allies within, welcoming emotional flow. We turn now to the second vital principle of natural healing in the Zen tradition. Emotions are not impediments to health, nor are they enemies to be vanquished. They are essential energies, profound allies, and the fastest messengers of the soul. When we attempt to suppress or reject them, they do not vanish. They simply migrate, transforming into physical rigidity, chronic pain, and disease. The core Buddhist concept of kleshas, often translated as afflictions or defilements, names the three root poisons: greed, aversion, and delusion. These are the emotional states that cloud our perception and cause suffering. But a deeper teaching in Zen and Vajrayana Buddhism offers a radical perspective. It is not the existence of the emotion that harms us, but our resistance to its immediate, honest energy. The masters teach that when a river is blocked, the water becomes stagnant, polluted, and eventually toxic to its environment. But the water itself is not the problem. The barrier is. Our emotional flow is the same. When we build internal dams against anger, grief, or fear, the life-giving energy that these emotions represent stagnates, and the body, which is nothing more than condensed, intelligent energy, begins to suffer the pollution. In a small, unassuming temple nestled among the bamboo groves, there was a sincere but deeply serious young monk named Daichi. Daichi was meticulous in his study of the scriptures, particularly drawn to the teachings on universal compassion, karuna, and radical equanimity. He viewed his own raw human emotions, especially anger, as evidence of his spiritual immaturity. Daichi had carried a quiet, molten resentment since his childhood, a feeling of being unjustly overlooked and misunderstood by his family. This deep-seated aversion did not manifest as shouting or outward fury. Instead, it became a slow, internal pressure. He worked tirelessly to cultivate a face of serene calm, convinced that a true monk was a being utterly untouched by the tides of human emotion. He disciplined his thoughts, pushing away any flicker of irritation or judgment toward his fellow monks, burying the emotion the moment it arose. But the body, as we have learned, keeps a faithful score. After a few years of this relentless self-suppression, Daichi developed a persistent, deep-seated burning in his stomach, a searing ache that often intensified in the stillness of Zazen. It felt like a low, endless fire, consuming him from the inside out. The pain became chronic, leading to severe digestive issues and an exhaustion that no amount of sleep could alleviate. He went to his master, a wise and very old woman named Seikyo. She sat behind the screen, listening to Daichi's careful, intellectualized description of his stomach pain and his frustration with his body's failure to achieve the peace his mind strived for. When he finished, Seikyo did not offer him a medical remedy. She simply asked, "Daichi, what is the fastest thing in this entire monastery?" Daichi paused, considering the koan. "The bell, master, when it is struck." "No," Seikyo replied. "The wind, perhaps, moving through the pines." "Slower than thought," the master said, her voice dry as old parchment. "Then I do not know, master." "The fastest thing," Seikyo whispered, "is anger. It arises, it burns, and in a single flicker, it is gone, having served its purpose as a signal of transgression. But you, Daichi, you are attempting to catch the fire in your hands and hold it still. You seek equanimity by preventing the fire from burning, which is impossible. So the fire, being the energy it is, finds the softest place in your inner chamber and burns there instead, slowly consuming your vitality." The master was revealing the physical manifestation of Daichi's suppressed aversion. The stomach, associated in many Eastern traditions with the processing of life and emotion, was literally trying to digest the fire of his unacknowledged anger and resentment. "Your stomach is not ill, Daichi," Seikyo concluded. "Your stomach is the compassionate vessel that is containing the emotional energy your spirit refused to feel. It is holding the very anger you banished." This is the profound teaching of turning kleshas into vajras, turning poison into medicine, or afflictions into adamantine clarity. The emotion itself is pure energy. Anger, at its core, is the raw energy of boundary, the power
powerful force that says no to what is harmful. Grief is the pure energy of love for what has been lost. Fear is the primal energy of attention to threat. When we reject the emotion, we reject the fundamental life force beneath it. Healing requires us to stop trying to be emotionless saints and start becoming compassionate hosts to the full spectrum of our human energy. Master Seio gave Daichi a new form of practice, utterly contrary to his previous efforts. She instructed him, when the burning sensation arises in your stomach, do not fight it. Do not meditate to make it go away. Instead, invite the anger back into the light of your awareness. Welcome it as a distinguished guest who has traveled a long distance to deliver a message. Daichi began this difficult raw practice. When the searing pain flared in his abdomen during meditation, he stopped trying to visualize peace or emptiness. Instead, he would turn his full attention to the sensation, naming it only by its primal energy: fire, heat, pressure, tightness. Then, he would offer the silent, compassionate phrase taught by the great Mahayana tradition: may this anger be free from suffering. May this fire be held in peace. He was not addressing the thought of the resentment, but the raw energy of the resentment, which was now physically residing in his gut. This act of welcoming was revolutionary. When he stopped resisting the heat, the mind stopped generating the fuel for the resistance. The sensation of the burning fire, once approached with welcome, began to transform its quality. It was no longer a menacing enemy. It became simply a fierce warmth. He realized that the physical intensity was so great because he had suppressed it for so long. It was the dam breaking, finally allowing the natural flow to begin again. By welcoming the fire, he was finally giving the raw energy of no the space it needed to speak its truth, and then dissipate naturally, as all energy must. Slowly, over months, the chronic burning subsided. It did not disappear overnight, but its relationship to him changed. When it arose, he no longer feared it. He simply listened to it, and in listening, the need for the body to shout the message diminished. This process highlights a crucial truth for natural healing. Emotions are meant to be felt fully, not analyzed endlessly. When we feel an emotion with our entire being, a flash of anger, a wave of tears, a moment of acute fear, it completes its cycle in 90 seconds, according to modern neurobiology. It is our mental story about the emotion. I shouldn't feel this. This is wrong. This makes me a bad person. That sustains the chemical bath and locks the energy into the physical body. Zen healing is about training the mind to simply be the non-judgmental container for the feeling energy, allowing it to move through the body rather than getting stuck in the body. Consider the analogy of the great Zen master Dogen's teaching on the nature of reality. He said, "Enlightenment is like the moon reflected in water.
The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. Our emotional life is like the water. The clarity of our awareness is like the moon. When an emotion arises, a ripple of sadness, a turbulent wave of fear, the water is disturbed. But the moon, our true nature, is never damaged. When we believe we must stop the water from rippling to preserve the moon, we suffer. When we realize the moon's light is reflected perfectly in the ripple, we are free. The practical application of Principle 2 is to engage in emotional contemplation. When a difficult emotion arises, whether it is sudden irritation or slow-moving sadness, do not follow the story. Do not engage with the person or situation that triggered it. Instead, immediately turn your attention inward. Step 1. Locate the residue. Where is the emotion living in your body? Anger is often a heat in the chest or a knot in the belly. Fear is a constriction in the throat or the solar plexus. Grief is a heavy pressure behind the eyes or in the center of the chest. Find the physical address of the emotional energy. Step 2. Name the sensation, not the story. Do not say, "I am sad because of X event." Say, "I feel a tingling tightness in my throat. I feel a cold, hollow ache in my stomach." Describe the raw, impersonal energy as if you were a scientist of the body. Step 3. Breathe. Welcome. Send your most gentle, full breath directly to that physical location. With the exhale, offer a silent, unconditional welcome. You are saying, "This energy is a part of me, and it is welcome to move here now." The deep breath acts as a pathway for the energy to move out of storage and back into flow. Step 4. Rest in the vastness. Recognize that you are not the tightness, the heat, or the cold. You are the vast, silent space of awareness that is holding the emotion. The feeling is a fleeting visitor, but you are the eternal host. When we hold our afflictions with this gentle, encompassing awareness, something extraordinary happens. The energy of the klesha transforms into prajna, or wisdom. The energy of aversion, anger, hatred, transforms into the wisdom of discernment, the clear ability to see what is beneficial and what is harmful, without the fire of personal attachment. The energy of greed, craving, attachment, transforms into the wisdom of equanimity, the peaceful recognition that all things are passing, and clinging to any of them is futile. The energy of delusion, confusion, numbness, transforms into the wisdom of all-encompassing reality, the radical clarity that everything is interconnected and perfectly whole, exactly as it is. The body begins to heal when it is no longer the prison for these banished energies, but the gentle, open chamber through which they pass. Consider the old teaching about the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is the enlightened being who postpones their own final release to stay in the world and help all beings. But the deepest teaching is that the Bodhisattva does not attempt to remove suffering from the world. The Bodhisattva simply enters into it with profound compassion, and in doing so, transforms the very nature of the suffering. When you enter your own pain, emotional or physical, with the heart of a Bodhisattva, you stop trying to fix or escape it. You simply move closer to it, embracing the raw sensation with complete presence. This intimacy is the medicine. The chronic tension in your shoulders might be the physical remnant of carrying unexpressed anxiety for years. Your frequent headaches might be the silent protest of a mind that constantly argues with reality. The healing is not in the massage or the pill, but in the radical willingness to say to the anxiety or the argument, "Come in, sit down, tell me your story. I will listen without interruption." And often, when finally listened to, the story is incredibly simple, and the physical messenger, the pain, is no longer required. In the ancient temples, the monks did not use sophisticated psychological language. They used the language of the elements and the body. When they spoke of emotional health, they spoke of the chi, life force, flowing like the wind, the blood moving like the river, and the organs functioning in seasonal harmony. If your emotional environment is one of constant self-judgment and rejection, "I shouldn't be angry. I am weak for feeling sad. I am a failure for being afraid," the chi in your body becomes constricted, cold, and uneven. This leads to physical blockages, areas of stagnation, and eventual dis-ease. But if your inner environment is one of radical self-compassion, "I am feeling the powerful energy of anger right now, and I will sit with it for a moment," or "the deep wave of grief is moving through me, and I will give it space," the chi flows freely. The body remains open, fluid, and capable of self-regulation and profound repair. To embody this principle, we must cultivate the Zen attitude of beginner's mind toward our emotions. When sadness arises, we treat it as if we have never experienced sadness before. We observe its color, its movement, its temperature, without the filter of past memories or future projections. We simply observe the raw energy of the feeling as it moves through the present moment. Let us practice this together now. Bring your awareness to your chest and your belly. Allow a subtle, gentle feeling to arise. It doesn't have to be a big, difficult emotion. Maybe just a sense of quiet worry or a lingering melancholy from the day. Instead of naming it worry, locate the physical sensation. Where is the density? Is it a light flutter in the chest or a deep, persistent ache? Breathe into the flutter. Breathe into the ache. With each breath, imagine the space around the sensation becoming larger, softer, more welcoming. You are wrapping the painful energy in the gentle blanket of your compassion. You are not trying to change it. You are simply holding it, giving it safe passage. The emotion does not define you. It is merely weather passing through the vast sky of your awareness. The sky is never harmed by the storm. It is simply the sky, vast and unchanging. This profound act of non-resistant observation is the deep medicine. When you welcome the dark loses its power to frighten you. When you welcome the sickness loses its power to define you. The path to natural healing is not a path of elimination, but a path of integration. It is the integration of the mind and body, the spirit and the flesh, the positive and the negative emotions. When the body and the heart-mind are no longer at war with the emotional energies of life, they can turn their full, unified force toward the simple, beautiful act of living, breathing, and being whole. Rest now in the knowledge that your inner life is precious, and every feeling, no matter how difficult, is an essential temporary message moving you closer to freedom. You are not broken. You are simply learning to listen to the extraordinary, complex song of your own vital energy, the compassionate embrace, the nature of sadness. The exploration of emotions as allies must necessarily lead us to the deepest, most quiet river of human experience, grief. In the rush to be healthy and happy, we often treat profound sadness as a weakness, an aberration to be medicated or pushed away. Yet the masters teach that grief, when unblocked, is one of the purest forms of energy. It is love with nowhere to go. It is the sacred, aching testament to the value of what was. When we refuse to honor this sacred ache, the body begins to store the unwept tears and the unvoiced love, often in the deepest, most life-sustaining places. In a small convent high on Mount Koya, where the air was thin and perpetually carried the scent of wet moss and burning incense, lived a quiet nun named Sister Renko. Renko had served the temple since she was a girl, her life one of gentle, relentless devotion. Yet, for nearly 30 years, she had suffered from a persistent, deep congestion in her chest, a heaviness that made her breathing shallow and her voice perpetually muted. The local doctor spoke of chronic lung weakness, but no prescribed herbal decoction could truly clear the persistent sense of an unbearable weight pressing down upon her sternum. This physical ailment was the somatic expression of her deepest, unspoken sorrow. When she was a young woman, not yet 20, her only child had been lost to a sudden illness. In the rigid structure of her time, and in her own profound religious discipline, she had been taught to view all worldly attachment as maya, illusion, and the experience of loss as a painful but necessary detachment. In her fierce determination to be a perfect renunciate, Renko had never allowed herself to grieve. She sealed the pain away, seeing the fierce tearing sorrow as a failure of her faith. The grief, unreleased, did not simply disappear. It solidified. It settled in the chamber of her heart and lungs, the places responsible for receiving and giving life, for the deep in-breath and the profound out-breath of connection. Her body was carrying the ghost of the tears she refused to shed. 1 year, the revered Master Shinzen came to the convent to lead a retreat. Shinzen was known for his radical, fierce compassion, the kind that did not comfort the illusion, but shattered it with light. During a private Sanzen interview, Renko presented her physical complaint, her voice barely a rasp.
"Master," she wheezed, "my lungs are weak. I cannot take the full, cleansing breath that Zazen requires. I feel burdened, as if a great, cold stone rests upon my chest. I fear this sickness hinders my path to liberation." Master Shinzen listened, his eyes closed. When he opened them, they were luminous and entirely present. He did not speak of herbs or exercise. He spoke of Tathata, the ultimate reality of suchness. "Sister Renko," he said, his voice deep and resonating. "You say a stone rests upon your chest, but I perceive that you yourself are grasping and clutching that stone with a terrible hidden love. That weight is not a sickness. It is the physical presence of 30 years of unacknowledged love for the one you lost, which you mistakenly labeled
as shame." Renko gasped, a sound caught halfway between a breath and a sob. "The Buddha taught," Shinzen continued, leaning forward gently, "that suffering is attachment to the desire for things to be otherwise. But this suffering is deeper. You are attached to the idea that a true seeker must be above love and loss. Your heart is protesting this lie. Healing does not mean removing the feeling of sorrow. Healing means allowing the full current of sorrow to flow through the heart, exactly as it is." He instructed her in the practice of the compassionate embrace. "Return to your cushion, Renko," he commanded. "And when the heaviness comes, do not fight it. Do not attempt to analyze it. Do not even pray for it to leave. Instead, practice Tathata. Simply welcome the sensation of the heavy stone as the suchness of this moment. Say to the heaviness silently, 'You are here. I am here. This is the truth.' And then, Renko, imagine you are the mother you once were, holding your lost child not with regret, but with the profound, unconditional tenderness of karuna, absolute compassion." This practice was terrifying for Renko. To voluntarily turn toward the raw, exposed wound of her life, which she had protected for decades, felt like spiritual self-destruction. In her next meditation, the heaviness came immediately, but this time, Renko did not constrict against it. She did as the master instructed. She allowed her awareness to enter the center of the congestion. It was a cold, dense energy, like frozen metal. Instead of reciting a sutra, she whispered to the ache, "I am here. I see you. I welcome you." As she held the sensation with this radical, unconditional love, the same love she had once held for her child. The frozen metal began to warm. The density did not vanish. Instead, it began to change its state. It softened. It became fluid. Then the tears came. Not the gentle, cleansing tears of a passing mood, but a torrent. 30 years of unshed grief, of unacknowledged vulnerability, of suppressed love. She cried not with agony, but with a profound, terrifying relief. The tears flowed without intellectual narrative, without judging herself, simply as the pure elemental cleansing of her spirit. She wept for an entire hour, her body convulsing, her breath finally, truly deep for the first time in decades. The chest that had been armored by repression was finally broken open by compassion. When the tide of sorrow finally subsided, Rinko did not feel empty. She felt vast. The congestion was gone. The stone was lifted. Her chest felt light, hollow, and utterly clear. The physical symptom had only been necessary for as long as the emotional truth remained suppressed. Once the love manifested as grief was allowed to flow, the body no longer needed to store it. The teaching here is essential to all natural healing. Grief is not a psychological problem. It is a vital, physiological necessity. The deep, chronic ailments we carry are often the physical residue of uncompleted emotional cycles. We are conditioned to rush past the feeling, to solve the problem, to cheer up. But the body requires the full, slow process of completion. In the Zen view, every emotion, including sorrow, is mu, empty of a permanent, independent self. When sorrow arises, we must feel its full energy, recognizing that it is merely a passing wave. If we try to hold the wave, it drowns us. If we treat it as an enemy, it hides in our tissues. If we simply surf the wave with our awareness, it carries us to the shore of profound, quiet peace. The practice of karuna toward pain is the ultimate antidote to chronic illness. We are often intensely compassionate toward the physical illness of others, but intensely judgmental of our own. We would never tell a friend with a chronic illness, "Stop being sick. Your pain is a failure." Yet we say this very thing to our own bodies and our own deepest sorrow every day. Healing requires us to become our own perfect, compassionate host. When a wave of fear or a cloud of sadness passes through, we must meet it with the same gentle, unwavering presence that Master Shinzen offered Renko. We offer the 3 sacred statements of welcome: acknowledgement, the gate of truth; I am feeling profound sorrow, fear, anger right now. I acknowledge this energy is present. No justification, no analysis. Physical location, the body's wisdom. I feel this as a hot pressure in my stomach and a tightness in my throat. Focus on the impersonal sensation. Unconditional welcome. The medicine of karuna. This feeling is welcome here. It is safe to move. I hold this energy with absolute compassion, exactly as it is. Radical non-resistance. When you apply this fierce, gentle compassion to deep-seated emotional pain, the physical holding begins to dissolve. The muscle tension that was created to brace against the world's perceived danger relaxes. The internal heat of suppressed irritation cools down. The frozen density of unexpressed grief begins to weep, not just through the eyes, but through the breath, the pause, and the relaxation of the organs. We can see this principle beautifully reflected in the teachings of the Zen poet and mendicant Han Shan, or Cold Mountain. Han Shan lived a solitary life, often writing poems on the rocks and trees. His simple, raw existence was a testament to Tathata, the sheer suchness of existence in all its cold, lonely beauty. His healing was his radical acceptance of his own condition. He was poor, often hungry, and entirely alone. Yet he found profound peace and expression in this exact reality. He did not ask for his reality to be better, warmer, or less painful. He simply was the cold mountain, and in that complete identification, he was free. His path teaches us, when the sadness is immense, stop trying to shrink it. Instead, become bigger than the sadness. Become the vast, empty sky that can hold the cloud of sorrow, the full storm of anger, and piercing star of joy, all at once, without being defined by any of them. The pain is the cloud, but you are the sky. The reason emotional pain becomes physical pain is that the self, in its fear, tries to turn the liquid, flowing energy of emotion into a solid, protective object. We turn grief into a stone, fear into a permanent knot, resentment into an eternal flame. The mind attempts to make the temporary permanent out of a desire for control. The body, being the honest mirror of this fixation, solidifies the energy, resulting in chronic tension and pain. The gentle release of this tension requires a spiritual shift. The shift from the desire for control to the embrace of flow. The body is inherently fluid. Blood, lymph, breath, tears, hormones, and chi are all meant to move. When we allow the emotional tides to move, we restore the natural fluidity of the body. If you are listening now and there is a quiet, deep sorrow you carry, a loss, a loneliness, a sadness that seems to have no origin, bring your gentle attention to it. Do not analyze the story. Simply focus on the sensation. Where in your body does the sorrow reside? Is it a sinking feeling, a hollow space, a pressure. Breathe into that space now, offering it the fierce, perfect welcome of a compassionate host. Imagine your breath moving through that density, not trying to blast it away, but simply softening its edges. You do not need to shed tears now, unless they come naturally. The simple, silent acknowledgement is enough. You are saying to the deepest part of your being, it is safe to be sad here. It is safe to feel the cost of love. I give you permission to complete your cycle. This profound permission is the most potent medicine you can offer your body. It is the permission to stop fighting, to stop holding, to stop being strong in the way the world demands. It is the deep, quiet, radical strength of surrender. In the end, Sister Renko's healing was complete, not because she was no longer capable of feeling loss, but because she had learned the language of her heart's deepest truth. Her breathing became full and clear, not through a surgical procedure, but through the opening of the spiritual channel that her fear had closed. She learned that a true renunciate does not renounce feeling, but renounces resistance to feeling. When you embrace the entire, magnificent spectrum of your emotional life, the joy, the anger, the fear, and the sorrow, you are restoring the original, unbroken harmony of your being. You are healing yourself, not by fixing a flaw, but by remembering your wholeness. Rest in the knowledge that your sorrow is simply love's echo, and your body is the sacred vessel of that truth, the eternal pharmacy, the medicine of the present moment. We now turn our attention to the third core principle of Zen healing, perhaps the most radical and immediately accessible. Healing is not a destination to be reached in the future, but a medicine available only in the profound stillness of the present moment. The mind, conditioned by modern life, constantly seeks healing in the realm of what if and when then. When I get the right diagnosis, then I will be well. If I can only fix my past mistakes, then my body will recover. This fixation on the past, regret, cause, history, and the future, fear, diagnosis, cure, drains the vital life force away from the only moment where life, and therefore healing, is actually occurring. This one breath. In Zen, the concept of Nien refers to the single thought moment, the intense, singular focus on the immediate, unfolding reality. True healing requires us to step out of the tyranny of the clock and the calendar and into the timeless reality of Nien. Centuries ago, deep in the mountains of China, there was a monk named Shinkai, renowned not for his profound sermons, but for his almost mystical ability to soothe the sick. People would travel for days, not for his herbal remedies, but simply to sit in his presence. One day, a wealthy and powerful local official, Lord Sato, arrived, tormented by a persistent, grinding affliction in his knees that made walking excruciating. Lord Sato was a man who lived entirely in the future. He was planning his retirement, calculating his legacy, and constantly worrying about his successor. When he met Shinkai, he immediately presented his case, not dwelling on the current pain, but on the future consequences. "Master Shinkai," Lord Sato lamented, "I fear this ailment is a sign of my decline. Soon I will be unable to travel, unable to attend to my duties, and my legacy will crumble. I must know the cause. I must know the cure. I must know the timeline. Tell me, when will I be well enough to complete my great plan?" Shinkai was tending to a small brittle-leafed bonsai tree, gently misting its miniature pines. He did not look up immediately. "Lord Sato," Shinkai finally asked, his voice calm, "when you look at this small tree, where is the most perfect part?" Lord Sato, impatient with the seeming detour, gestured vaguely. "The trunk, master. It is the strongest, the foundation." Shinkai shook his head gently. "No. In the whole life of this tree, the long, striving past of its root binding, the uncertain future of its growth, the most perfect part, the only part that is truly alive, is the tiny unfolding bud at the very tip of the highest branch. It contains the whole of the tree's potential, and it is manifesting the whole of the tree's reality right now." He finally looked at Lord Sato. "You come to me demanding a future cure, but you have starved the only moment that possesses the power to cure. You are living in a sickness of anticipation. The body, being wise, has created a physical barrier, the pain in your knees, that forces you to stop moving toward a future that is not here and settle into the present ground." The master was speaking to the koan of the moment. The self that is sick is the self that is divided, split between the memory of a well past and the hope of a well future. The self that heals is the self that is undivided, fully present in the sheer, raw reality of this physical sensation, this simple breath, this one moment of quiet stillness. The healing power of the present moment lies in its completeness. In the now, there is no sickness to fear, only the current sensation to acknowledge. The diagnosis is a word from the past, a summary of history, but the actual pain in this second is merely raw energy. When we meet that raw energy, without the label or the story of the past, its power to frighten and define us dissolves. This is the meaning of the Zen saying, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. When the body is in pain, simply be with the pain without the mental commentary." This radical acceptance of what is, this moment's pure truth, is the deepest form of self-love and the most potent medicine. The foundational healing practice in Zen is, of course, Zazen, or seated meditation, but Zazen is not merely relaxation. It is the fierce revolutionary act of refusing to leave the present moment, no matter how uncomfortable the body or how chaotic the mind. When the mind wanders into the fear of the future, what if this pain is permanent? The practice is simply to acknowledge the thought, thinking, and return the awareness to the anchor, the breath, the physical presence of the hands, the feeling of the cushion beneath the body. When the mind wanders into the regret of the past, I shouldn't have done that. That is what caused this. The practice is to acknowledge the thought, regretting, and return to the immediacy of Nien. By repeatedly and gently returning the mind to the now, we restore the body's innate capacity for self-repair. Why? Because the body's primary healing mechanism, the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, can only be activated when the mind is fully present. When the mind is anxiously projecting into the future, the body remains perpetually in the fight or flight sympathetic stress response. In this state, the body is directing all its energy to survival. Heart rate elevated, muscles tense, digestion suppressed, and crucially, immune function down-regulated. The body believes it is running from a tiger and cannot afford to repair itself. The simple, unforced settling into the present moment is the only thing that signals to the entire system, it is safe now. The koan of the single coin illustrates this perfectly. A young man, desperate and starving, came to the Zen master Ikkyu seeking advice. "Master," he cried, "I have no money, no home, and I am desperately ill. I feel that I am cursed by my entire miserable past. What should I do to survive this day?" Ikkyu reached into his sleeve and pulled out a single ancient copper coin. "Take this," he said. "It is enough for one meal and lodging for this night. But you must promise me one thing. You must use the coin for this moment only." The young man was confused. "What does that mean, master?" "It means," Ikkyu replied, "that when you are eating the rice, you are not to think of tomorrow's hunger. When you are sleeping on the mat, you are not to worry about the landlord. The only true medicine for your suffering is to allow yourself to be completely, wholly present in the single, small mercy this coin can buy you right now." The young man took the coin and went to the market. He bought a bowl of hot rice and sat down. As he ate, he concentrated fiercely on the texture of the grain, the warmth of the broth, the simple satisfaction in his belly. He had not tasted anything so exquisite in years. When he finished, he found a cheap clean mat in a common lodging house. As he lay down, he focused only on the feeling of his body finally relaxing, the coolness of the air on his skin, the sounds of the night. He slept more deeply and peacefully than he had since his childhood. He returned to Ikkyu the next morning, his eyes clear. "Master," he said, "I realize that for all these years, my sickness was not my poverty, but my divided attention. When I ate, I worried about sleeping. When I slept, I worried about eating. I was never fully alive in any moment. The coin taught me that the moment of eating is the moment of health. The single copper coin is the present moment. It contains exactly enough for the task at hand, enough energy for this breath, enough awareness for this sensation, enough life for this second. When we spend the coin of the present moment worrying about the future, we become bankrupt in the now, and the body suffers the deficit. Healing, therefore, is the practice of richness in the now. If you are experiencing pain, the medicine is to bring your richest, fullest attention to the raw texture of the pain. Do not try to make it go away. Simply become intimate with it. When you feel the weight of anxiety, the medicine is to bring your richest attention to the rapid rhythm of the heart and the shallow catch of the breath. In that fierce intimacy, you break the cycle of resistance. The pain is no longer a problem to be solved later, but a profound, interesting sensation to be explored now. And in the exploration, the fear evaporates, and the body's natural capacity for flow is restored. Let us practice this eternal medicine now. We will focus on the most reliable measure of the present moment, the breath. Allow your eyes to gently close and feel the weight of your body settling. Release the effort of the day. Do not try to breathe. Allow the breath to breathe itself. You are merely the quiet witness. Feel the air entering your nostrils. Is it cool or warm? Feel the air traveling down, expanding your rib cage, maybe lightly expanding your belly. Now, pause for a moment at the very top of the inhale. In that tiny seamless space, there is no past and no future. There is only pure potential, and then feel the slow, full release of the exhale as the air leaves your body. Feel the relaxation that follows, the subtle but profound letting go. The exhale is the sound of the universe saying, you do not have to hold on. Pause again at the very bottom of the exhale, in the quiet, empty space, before the next breath begins. Here, too, is the vastness of the eternal now. This tiny repeating cycle, the top pause, the bottom pause, is the secret pharmacy. In those spaces, you are fully present, and in full presence, there is no fear, no resistance, and no disease, only the simple, perfect truth of being. The chronic illness or the deep-seated tension is, by definition, a pattern frozen in time. It is a memory of past stress held captive in the physical tissue. The present moment is the solvent that dissolves that frozen pattern. It is the warm light that melts the ice. Lord Sato learned this lesson the hard way. He spent months resting, forced by the pain to stop striving and planning. He began to practice simple zazen, focusing only on his breath, and the feeling of the cushion. He stopped demanding to know his future timeline, and in that profound, unforced stillness, a quiet, deep warmth began to return to his knees. The healing came not because he found the cause of the disease in his history or the cure in a future pill, but because he finally directed his full, undivided life energy to the simple act of being alive right now. The medicine is not outside you. It is not waiting for you. It is here. It is this breath. It is this awareness. Rest now in the knowledge that you are whole, entirely present, and perfectly held in the quiet infinity of this very moment. No other place. Finding sanctuary in the now. We deepen our understanding of the present moment as the site of all true healing by exploring the radical peace found in non-seeking. The mind constantly seeks a better place, a healed state, a different moment. This very act of seeking creates the internal tension that the body registers as chronic unease. The Zen masters remind us that the sanctuary is not waiting for us down the road. The sanctuary is the ground upon which we are already standing. In the 14th century, the era of the great poet monks, there was a young pilgrim named Jizo. Jizo was not a seeker of enlightenment, but of a cure. He was afflicted with a persistent, gnawing stiffness in his joints that made his long pilgrimage across the mountains an agony. He believed that if he could just reach the fabled, healing hot spring, tucked away in the highest peaks of Shinano, his body would be cleansed and renewed. His journey became a daily battle. Each step was a measurement of the distance remaining. He ignored the present moment entirely, focusing only on the imagined relief of the destination. He ate his meager rice with distracted haste, looking up only to check the next trail marker. He slept poorly, his mind constantly rehearsing the pain of the next morning's climb and the glorious relief of the spring one afternoon lost in a sudden thick mountain fog. He stumbled and fell. The pain in his knees was immediate and searing. He lay there, defeated, the damp air chilling him to the bone, the dense fog wrapping him in a gray, isolating shroud. He was completely alone, unable to discern the path forward or the path back. His entire body screamed, "I am lost. I am broken. I will never reach the healing place." Just as despair began to choke him, he heard a sound, not a voice, but a gentle, rhythmic tapping nearby. Through the swirling mist, an old woman emerged, leaning on a simple, thick staff. She wore the tattered robes of a mendicant and carried a small basket of wild herbs. Her face was a map of gentle, weathered kindness, and her eyes held the vast, quiet depth of the mountain itself. "Young one," she said, her voice clear and surprisingly strong, "why do you lie on the road as if it were a battlefield? I am defeated, grandmother, Jizo whispered, tears stinging his eyes. I am in great pain, and the fog has hidden the path to the healing spring. I have lost my direction, and I fear I will never be well. The old woman did not attempt to fix his joints or point him toward the spring. Instead, she gently tapped her staff on the damp earth next to him. "Tell me," she asked, "where is the safest, most certain place you know right now?" Jizo pointed vaguely into the mist. "The spring, if I could reach it." She shook her head. "No, the spring is a story in your future. It is a cloud that may or may not exist. I am asking you, where is the ultimate non-moving sanctuary right now?" Defeated, Jizo could only answer honestly. "The only place I know for certain is this small patch of damp earth beneath my body." The old woman smiled, a profound, luminous expression that seemed to momentarily part the fog. "Exactly, Jizo. The healing place is not a spring you must walk to. The healing place is the radical acceptance of the ground you are standing on. This wet earth, this sharp pain, this choking fog, this is the suchness of the present moment. This is the only place of true safety." She then delivered the final, liberating teaching. "You are spending all your vital energy moving away from the pain, seeking to get well. This seeking is the very thing that keeps your muscles and your spirit tight. Stop striving. Stop seeking for one complete breath. Simply be the damp earth that holds the pain. Be the awareness that holds the fog. This is the essence of Principle 3, the medicine of the present moment, fully realized through non-seeing stillness. The most potent shift in the body's healing cascade occurs when the mind stops trying to force a change and simply allows the body to be." Jizo took the old woman's words deeply into his heart. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in months, he stopped pushing. He allowed his weary body to sink entirely into the damp earth, releasing the tension in his shoulders and jaw that had been braced for the next painful step. He brought his full, unblinking attention to the searing ache in his knees. Instead of recoiling from it, he imagined he was the vast, warm earth itself, capable of holding this momentary, intense heat. He did not ask the pain to leave. He merely observed it. He felt the cold of the fog and the rough texture of the fallen leaves against his cheek. He allowed the sound of the fog-muted forest to enter his ears. And in this radical surrender, something profound shifted. The pain did not vanish instantly, but its quality transformed. The fear, the story that the pain meant permanent damage or future failure, evaporated, What remained was simply the raw, physical energy of the sensation, and the moment the fear was gone, the body's internal bracing relaxed. The muscles surrounding his joints, which had been locked in protective tension, softened. He realized the chronic stiffness had been compounded by his own relentless mental striving and physical resistance. The healing, when it began, was not an arrival at a special place, but a spontaneous release in the place where he had always been. This liberation is the connection between stillness, jhana in its deepest sense, and physiological repair. When we practice non-seeking in the face of physical discomfort, we activate the body's internal mechanisms for healing. Redirection of qi, the energy that was being expended on the anxiety of the future and the analysis of the past, is immediately recalled and concentrated in the present. This vital qi is then available for cellular repair and immune function, which is the body's constant, silent work. Activation of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, a massive pathway connecting the brain to the major organs, heart, lungs, digestive tract, is the primary driver of the parasympathetic rest and repair system. Intense focus on the unforced breath and the gentle, non-resistant acceptance of bodily sensation directly signals to the vagus nerve that the crisis is over. This lowers the heart rate, reduces cortisol and adrenaline, and finally permits the body to turn its energy from defense back to maintenance. Dissolution of the fixed story. Chronic pain often persists because it is locked into a fixed narrative in the brain. The practice of tathata, radical presence, interrupts this narrative loop. By meeting the pain as raw sensation rather than as my chronic condition, the brain begins to unlearn the pattern of suffering. The Zen approach to healing is a call to embodied presence. It asks us to make peace, not with an idealized body, but with the body we inhabit this very second. The aching joint is exactly where the meditation begins. The throbbing headache is the perfect koan for this moment's practice. In the monastery, the master often taught by example. When a young monk complained of the heat of summer and begged to move his meditation cushion to a cooler spot, the master only smiled and said, "Where does the heat reside? In the air or in your refusal to be with the air? When you move the cushion, you move the body, but the mind's refusal travels with you." The true cooling, the true healing, comes not from changing the external condition, but from changing the internal relationship to the condition. The moment the monk surrendered to the intensity of the heat, his body's automatic, subtle cooling mechanisms, the shift in blood flow, the quietening of the stress hormones could finally engage. Jizo did not reach the spring until many weeks later. By then, the spring held no mystical power for him. The true healing had already occurred, not in the waters of the mountain, but in the radical, spontaneous acceptance he found on the damp earth of his defeat. He realized that the destination he had sought was simply the internal freedom from the need for a destination. When you allow the body to be exactly as it is, heavy, light, stiff, aching, tired, or energized, you restore its original dignity. You stop trying to force the river to flow uphill and simply allow it to flow according to its own profound, intelligent nature. Let us close this section with a moment of no other place practice. Bring your full attention to the feeling of your body against the surface supporting you. The chair, the bed, the mat. Feel the absolute unconditional support offered by that surface and by extension, by the earth beneath it. Notice the gentle weight of your body settling. If there is a physical sensation that calls for your attention, do not categorize it or fear it. Simply breathe into it and offer it the simple, profound mantra of acceptance. I am here, and this is here. There is no other place I need to be. Breathe in, I am here. Breathe out, this is here. In this fierce, gentle presence, there is only wholeness. There is only now. Rest in the quiet, unchanging sanctuary of this moment, the liberated scroll, changing the story of aging. We now turn our attention to the fourth vital principle of Zen healing, which addresses the most universal of all conditions, impermanence and the aging body. This principle is decal. Our physical decline is not a failure of the body, but a reflection of the stories we tell about time and mortality. Healing, in this context, is the liberation from the fear of change. The Buddha's first great realization that set him on the path was the sight of the four sights: the old person, the sick person, the dead person, and finally, the mendicant monk. It was the crushing reality of old age, jara, and sickness, vyadi, that revealed the inevitability of suffering. The Zen response to this suffering is not to deny aging, but to embrace it as the highest form of teaching, the body becoming the final, most profound scripture. In the temples of the past, the elderly master was not seen as a decaying vessel, but as a living monument of wisdom. Their wrinkles were the maps of their patience. Their slower steps were the visual koan of non-striving. Consider the story inspired by the great Zen master Fayan Wenyi, who lived in the 10th century. In his late years, Master Fayan was revered, yet his body began to fail him in visible ways. He developed a severe stoop. His hands trembled constantly, and his eyesight grew so dim that he could no longer read the sutras he had spent a lifetime studying. The monks, worried for their master's comfort, often spoke of his condition with hushed voices, viewing his decline as a tragedy, a physical contradiction to the profound realization he had achieved. One morning, the chief disciple, concerned by Phaeon's visible frailty, approached him. "Master," the disciple lamented, "your body is afflicted by time. Your strength is fading. How can we continue to receive your clear teaching when the vessel is so compromised?" Phaeon was sitting by the window, the morning sun illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He did not look at the disciple, but extended his trembling hand, palm up. "Look closely," Phaeon said, his voice a dry whisper. "When the hand trembles, is the trembling in the hand, or is it in the mind that judges the hand's movement?" The disciple stammered, "The movement is in the hand, Master, but the sadness is in my mind, for I see your loss of strength." Phaeon gently closed his hand. "There is no loss here, there is only change. You are afraid of the story of decline that you are projecting onto this simple, aged flesh. But I, who live inside this vessel, feel no loss. I feel only the profound, momentary teaching of the great impermanence. Anicca." He then pointed to a faded, worn scroll hanging on the wall, an ancient text that had been handled by generations of seekers. "Tell me," Phaeon asked, "is that scroll more sacred now that its edges are frayed and its colors are faded, or when it was first painted?" "It is more sacred now, Master," the disciple replied immediately, "because it has witnessed so many truths and held the path for so long." "So too is the body," Phaeon declared. "This body is a scroll, and its wrinkles are not signs of decay, but the sacred markings of its life's witness. Every ache is a teaching of letting go. Every stiffness is an invitation to deeper stillness. To see old age as a tragedy is to miss the final, most profound teaching. That which is changing is not who you are. This teaching breaks the cycle of fear-based illness that is so prevalent in our culture. Much of chronic disease in later life is exacerbated by the deep unconscious fear that the body is betraying us, that we are running out of time, and that we must desperately cling to the vitality of youth. This clinging creates intense psychological and physiological stress. In the Zen view, the body is subject to the 10,000 changes, and the true self, Mu-Shin, the non-mind, is the changeless awareness that observes them all. Healing the aging body is not about reversing time, an impossible and exhausting task, but about aligning our consciousness with the reality of time. When we stop fighting the inevitable process of entropy, the energy we were spending on resistance is freed up for the quiet, sustaining maintenance of the now. The practical application of this principle is the practice of sacred acceptance. If you are dealing with chronic pain or a condition related to aging, the mind instantly creates a narrative of resistance. I am too young for this. This isn't fair. My body shouldn't be this way. This thought pattern generates stress hormones, tightens the fascia, and restricts blood flow, literally accelerating the sense of decline. The practice of sacred acceptance involves 4 steps. Witness the narrative. The moment you notice the thought of decline or judgment, e.g., my knees are failing, simply label the thought, aging story or judgment. Do not engage with it. Locate the change. Turn your attention to the part of the body experiencing the change. Acknowledge the change with fierce, honest love. My knee is stiff. I acknowledge this stiffness as the perfect, current truth of this moment. Honor the impermanence. Anicca. Whisper a silent, compassionate mantra. This stiffness is changing, even as I speak. It is not permanent. It is moving. This aligns your consciousness with the true nature of reality. Everything, even the most persistent pain, is in motion. Reframe as sacred text. Ask the sensation. What is the teaching here? The stiffness might be teaching you patience. The pain might be teaching you humility. The fading sight might be teaching you to rely on inner vision. The aging body is the final master, teaching you the simple, essential truth of letting go. Master Phayan's final years were a testament to this truth. Though his body was physically diminished, his presence grew infinitely vast. He no longer taught with grand words, but with his simple open hand, his gentle, slow breath, and his luminous, fearless gaze. He had become the living koan of impermanence, teaching that the freedom we seek is found not in avoiding the change, but in riding the wave of change with absolute, non-resistant acceptance. His body did not heal in the sense of returning to youth. It healed in the most profound sense. It became whole again. The outer physical reality was no longer in conflict with the inner spiritual reality. The man was in complete harmony with his age, his limitations, and the inevitable flow of his life energy back to the source. In the context of modern diagnoses, this principle is the most freeing. When a doctor gives you a prognosis, it is a statement based on statistical history and a fear-based projection of the future. It is a story about the collective, not a prophecy about your unique, individual consciousness. Your power to heal is not in resisting the diagnosis, but in refusing to allow the diagnosis to become your entire story. You accept the information. My body is currently manifesting this condition, but you reject the narrative of hopelessness. This condition defines my future and my worth. The Zen practitioner knows that even in the face of terminal illness, the true self remains unblemished. The body, the precious vessel, will eventually return to the earth. But the awareness that holds the body is vast, formless, and eternal. This fearlessness in the face of mortality is the deepest medicine. When the fear of death, the ultimate fear of future failure, recedes, the body's defensive system can finally relax. The fight or flight response, which has been constantly taxing the system, is switched off. This massive energetic release creates a profound internal environment for peace and, often, spontaneous healing or a sudden, miraculous alleviation of pain. Take a gentle, full breath now, and let your mind touch the concept of your own final age. Imagine your hands worn, your gait slow, your vision soft. Hold this image with profound love and respect. This future self is not an object of pity or dread. It is the culmination of your journey, the final sacred scroll. Offer a silent bow to this inevitable reality. In this deep, fearless bow to impermanence, you are liberating the body you inhabit right now. You are giving it permission to be exactly as it is without the exhausting pressure of trying to stop the clock. In this deep, quiet acceptance of time, you find the timeless peace that sustains life in all its phases. The quiet breath, purpose as cellular life. We move now to the fifth and final profound principle of Zen healing. Purpose is the very breath of the cells. Healing is not merely the absence of disease. It is the presence of a deep, sustaining reason for being. When the life force or chi has a clear, unburdened channel toward a meaningful act, the entire physical system aligns in support of that flow. The deepest medicine is the daily, quiet act of service and meaning. In the Buddhist tradition, this concept is embodied in the Bodhisattva vow, the radical commitment to postpone one's own final, ultimate peace until all sentient beings are freed from suffering. This vow is not a grand, unattainable ambition. It is the practical, daily choice to live for something larger than one's personal comfort or ailment. This external focus provides a profound internal release from the self-absorption that often fuels chronic illness. In the monastery of Ahaji, surrounded by ancient towering cedar trees, lived an old monk named Kyoen. Kyoen was not known for his deep scholarship or his mastery of the koans. He was known simply as the gardener. His sole, quiet purpose was to tend to the temple's ancient, sprawling grounds. His work was demanding, weeding, raking, tending to the massive, moss-covered stone paths, and particularly caring for a single magnificent 300-year-old pine tree that was the spiritual anchor of the compound. Kyoen was over 80 years old, and he was riddled with the physical complaints of his age. Arthritis in his knuckles, a chronic painful knot in his shoulder, and the general weariness of a life lived outdoors. The other, younger monks would pity his struggle, suggesting he retire to lighter duties. But Kyoen refused, always replying with a gentle smile that the garden needed him more than he needed rest. One particularly harsh winter, the ancient pine tree began to show signs of severe decline. Its needles yellowed and dropped in clumps. A great section of bark peeled away, exposing raw wood. The other monks despaired, believing the magnificent tree was dying. Kyoen, despite the intense cold ache in his joints, dedicated himself entirely to the failing tree. His purpose became singular and absolute: to sustain this one life. He spent hours in the bitter cold, his hands trembling with cold and pain, gently scraping away diseased wood, applying protective mud to the exposed trunk, and speaking softly to the tree as if it were a fragile child. He was entirely focused, entirely present, and utterly without concern for his own comfort or physical ailment. During this period, the chronic pain that had plagued him for years began to recede into the background. It did not vanish, but it ceased to be the dominant feature of his existence. He still felt the ache, but the awareness of the pain was overwhelmed by the profound flow of life force and attention directed toward the tree. The intense external focus on the tree's need created an internal environment of non-resistance to his own body's complaints. The pain, deprived of his fear and attention, simply quieted. A visiting scholar, observing the tireless old monk and the slight but visible recovery of the great pine, asked Kyoen's master about this phenomenon. "Master," the scholar asked,
"How can an old man, clearly beset by such physical ailments, work so tirelessly and with such clear, radiating energy? It seems his pain simply disappears when he tends the tree." The master looked at the ancient, revitalized pine, and then at the stooped, busy figure of Kyoen. "The sickness of the body," the master replied, "is often the spirit's quiet complaint that it has nothing worth suffering for. Kyoen's true disease was the slow, draining self-absorption of old age, the focusing on one's own aches and losses. When the great pine fell ill, it offered Kyoen a gift, a purpose so pure and encompassing that it demanded all his awareness. His chai, his vital energy, now flows not toward the maintenance of a fragile, pain-ridden self, but outward, in a seamless, unbroken circuit of care and service. The flow of life force, directed outward, is the same flow of life force that heals the cells within. He is breathing life into the tree, and in return, the purpose of the tree is breathing life back into every cell of his body. This is the central healing power of purpose. It breaks the isolating loop of self-concern. When we are focused on our physical complaints, the mind becomes small, contracted, and self-referential. This is
Intense self-focus often mirrors the very nature of chronic pain, a localized, contracted, persistent signal. The energetic flow of the body becomes trapped in this small, tense space. Purpose, even the most quiet and humble purpose, acts as an energetic funnel. It takes the blocked, stagnant energy of the self and channels it outward into the world, connecting the individual life with the greater flow of reality. In the context of modern life and healing, this principle is crucial. It's not about grandeur. Kyoen's purpose was not to save the world, but to save one tree. Healing purpose is found in the simple, essential, daily acts that require our presence and care. Tending a garden, patiently listening to a friend, cooking a meal with deep attention, or simply maintaining a peaceful and kind presence in the face of chaos. Purpose demands presence. True purpose requires full, non-judgmental attention. When Kyoen was scraping the bark of the pine, he could not be worrying about his arthritis. His attention was wholly, fiercely dedicated to the task. This absolute presence automatically engages the medicine of the present moment. Principle 3. Allowing the mind and body to align and rest from internal conflict. It is the vow, not the outcome. The healing power is in the commitment to the service, not the success of the outcome. Whether the pine lived or died, Kyoen's chi was flowing, and his consciousness was liberated from its fear. The act of giving is itself the healing. To integrate this principle, we must cultivate the Bodhisattva's gentle hand in our own lives. If you are struggling with a chronic condition, the mind can become a cage, constantly revolving around symptoms, fears, and treatments. To break this loop, you do not need to ignore your condition, but you need to dedicate a portion of your awareness to an external channel of life. Consider now the small, quiet, essential act of care that calls for your attention. It could be the simple, silent, dedicated act of feeding a bird outside your window, or tending to a single houseplant, or offering a moment of non-judgmental listening to a loved one. Do this task with the complete, fierce attention of Master Kyoen tending his great pine. Do it not for reward, but simply because the life outside of you requires your presence. As you engage in this act, feel your energy, your chi, flowing outward from your core, through your hands, through your gaze, into the world. Feel the sense of unburdening that comes when your focus is on the object of your care, rather than the subject of your pain. This outward flow of life force is the healing current. It is the simple, profound realization that you are not a contracted entity of suffering, but an essential, interconnected part of the vast, living web of existence. Your life, even in sickness or age, is utterly necessary. Your presence is the medicine for the world, And in that selfless offering, the world's vitality is returned to you. The separation dissolves. The healing is complete. Rest now in the knowing that your purpose is as quiet and essential as your next breath, returning to wholeness. The unsolved mystery. We come now to the final movement of our journey, the synthesis of the 5 principles we have explored. The masters teach that these principles, the wisdom of the body, the welcome of emotion, the medicine of the present, the liberation from the story of aging, and the quiet power of purpose, are not separate techniques. They are a single, continuous, luminous path back to a state of being we never truly left. Inherent wholeness. The core delusion that causes suffering, both spiritual and physical, is the belief that we are fundamentally broken and must be fixed. This belief is the root of fear, the source of resistance, and the chief engineer of chronic tension. The wisdom of Zen, the quiet, revolutionary truth, is that you are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived. To understand this final step, we look to the concept of the unsolved koan. A koan is a public case, a riddle given by a master to a student, which cannot be solved by the intellect. It is designed to exhaust the rational mind and force a spontaneous, full-body realization. The greatest koan of all is our own existence, our own body, our own health. We chase the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the diet, the supplement. We try to solve the body, but the body, in its true nature, is a living, breathing, unfixed mystery of constantly changing energy. Imagine a highly dedicated monk named Tokudo, who spent 30 years wrestling with a debilitating tremor in his right hand. He saw the tremor as his great spiritual failure, a sign that his meditation was not deep enough, or his past karma was too heavy. He sought masters and physicians across the land, desperate for the final answer that would fix his flaw. One day, he came to Master Hojun, who lived in a small, damp hermitage by the sea. Tokudo, holding his trembling hand out for inspection, detailed his decades of struggle and his frantic search for a solution. Master Hojun looked at the hand, not with medical scrutiny, but with profound reverence. He gently took the trembling hand in his own steady one, covering it completely. "Tokudo," Hojun asked softly, "when you are alone in your hermitage and the tremor begins, is it you who is trembling, or is it the universe expressing itself through this small vessel of flesh?" Tokudo, startled, realized that when he trembled, he was always resisting it, always thinking, "I must stop this. This is wrong." Hojun continued, "You have spent your life trying to fix the hand, trying to separate the sickness from the self. But tell me, is your compassion for your hand any less because it trembles? Does the movement diminish the light of your being?" "No, Master," Tokudo admitted, "but it diminishes my peace." "Your peace is diminished Ho-Jun corrected, because you insist that peace means non-trembling, but true peace is the vastness of the awareness that holds the trembling hand with unconditional acceptance. The tremor is not a problem to be solved, Tokudo. It is the final, intimate koan your life has given you. It is the spontaneous song of change. You must not seek to solve it. You must simply live it fully, without resistance. Ho-Jun then removed his hand and gently kissed the trembling wrist. "Go home, Tokudo," the master commanded. "And when the hand moves, do not ask why it moves or how to stop it. Simply ask, what is it like to be the awareness that holds this moving hand right now? Do not seek the solution. Be the mystery." Tokudo returned to his hermitage. He did not change his diet, his herbs, or his practice. He only changed his relationship to his tremor. When the hand shook, he would gently bring his entire, undivided attention to the sensation. He stopped calling it my failure and started calling it the flow. He allowed the trembling to move through him, recognizing that the essence of his being was the stillness that was holding the movement. He stopped seeking a future where the hand was still, and he settled entirely into the reality of the hand that was moving right now. The physical symptom, deprived of the mental fuel of fear and resistance, slowly, subtly began to soften. The tremor did not vanish completely, for life is constant motion, but its violence receded. It became a gentle, rhythmic hum, a quiet reminder of impermanence, instead of a loud, tormenting enemy. The ultimate healing is this shift in identity, from the contracted self that believes I am my sickness, to the vast awareness that knows I am the space that holds the sickness. We integrate all 5 principles in this final surrender to the mystery, the body's wisdom. We recognize the pain is not an enemy, but the essential momentary language of our current condition, demanding our radical attention. Emotional allies. We allow the fear, the frustration, or the grief that arises with illness to flow through us completely, knowing that these energies, when released, become the flow of healing, the present moment. We refuse to spend the energy of the now on the fear of the future or the regret of the past, concentrating all our life force on this single, perfect breath. Sacred acceptance of change. We release the story that the body should be other than it is, younger, stronger, different, and embrace the body as the sacred, ever-changing scroll of our lifetime. Purpose as life. We funnel the free energy of non-resistance back into a simple, quiet act of caring or meaning, moving our focus from the contracted self to the expansive world. When these currents align, the body's innate self-regulating wisdom is fully restored. The healing is no longer a battle. It is simply a return to flow. Take a final, deep, unforced breath now, allowing your body to settle deeper into its resting place. Acknowledge the places in your body that are tired or tense or pained. Do not judge them. Do not fix them. Simply offer them the profound, unearned compassion of your awareness. Rest in the quiet knowledge that your fundamental essence has never been sick. Your core being is not defined by any ailment, any diagnosis, or any limitation. You are the vast, silent field in which the physical and emotional weather of life is constantly moving. The weather is real, but it is not the sky. May you carry this peace with you as you drift into rest. May you remember your wholeness. May you recognize that the greatest mystery is the simple, quiet miracle of your breathing, living presence.